Welcome to another talk for today. It's gonna be like as usual about relationship matters, and today's topic is gonna be about 10 tips of how to make your relationship healthy. So stick around, and there's a lot more to talk about. It's gonna be fun. Actually, there's a lot more than 10, but I'm gonna try to summarize it to 10. Yeah, now it's much better. Thanks for that. All right, so I'm going to be talking today about, because we are in different types of relationships, right? We are in relationships with the families, with loved ones, with work, with colleagues, and even the ones we don't like in our lives, we have a relationship with them. So if we want to nurture that relationship, there are things that we can do. We can definitely do. The common thing is like what I find some people they say is like they need to change. The other person needs to change. But you need to be mindful that you own 50% of that relationship. So it's not always up to the other person. So today we're going to be discussing some of these possibilities. One of the things that you can think of, what can you guys guess? What will be the first one? Maybe we can talk about. Communicate. Yeah, that's really right on the top. That's something that we all need to be mindful of, that we need to communicate in order for us to improve that relationship. So what about communication? Why do we communicate? I mentioned we improve but how do we improve the relationship by communicating? What is it about communicating that really helps us to improve the relationship? It helps us understand the other person. It actually, in many ways, it also helps us to understand ourselves. Because sometimes when we say it, it's different somehow when we think it. So when we kind of share it out and how people perceive it, their feedback also gives us an interesting like discovery about ourselves. So communication is very, very important. And as we communicate, another thing is really to, if you want to really work on any relationship, it's really important to show interest in the other person. If the person is your sibling, your parent, or your child, or your classmate, it's really important to be genuine and show genuine interest in that person's well-being, health, safety, interested of knowing about what they're interested in. So that's really something that can definitely help the relationship. Because what you're doing really by when you communicate with the other person in the relationship, let's say for example that you're the child, and that's a very common disconnect between parents and children. It's really common because there's a lot of assumptions that go along with that. And also for people who are in a relationship, in a romantic or some kind of intimate relationship, there's a lot of information that is not communicated and it's assumed about the other person. So when we start talking about it, it removes the assumption. It allows the thoughts and the assumptions to be either validated or what's the other possibility? Invalidated, meaning or corrected. So it can be affirm it to say, yeah, that's what I thought, or it's like, oh, I didn't think of it that way. I didn't know you didn't like cheese. I thought you just didn't like pizza. Something like that. But it can be a lot deeper than that. So between parents and children is the most important communication that can be done. So a lot of times we find children who say that my dad is absent, my mom is busy with her work. My siblings are all busy. I'm all alone. So it's really important to be mindful that you own that 50% of that relationship. So you can initiate. You can start communicating. You can tell them that you miss them. You can tell them that you'd like to talk to them. You can tell them that you want to spend time with them. So that's something that you can do. So that's how you can improve that relationship. So you have 50% chance of making a change in that relationship. And the worst thing could happen, everything will stay status quo. So what? But at least I give it a try. So by communicating, by show interest, so sometimes we communicate because we want attention, right? But sometimes it's also important to give that attention. So to give that interest in other people's uh, lives or whatever they do. What are your some thoughts or questions about this, guys? Any thoughts or questions? No? So all of it is good. You guys agree to everything. Wow. So maybe you already know it. Like, maybe that's what it is, right? Okay, so this brings us to the third one. So if we show interest, it's really important to also, I mean, all of the things that I'm sharing here is something that you have control over, that you can do, that definitely will improve that relationship, whatever it is that you want to, whatever relationship that you want to improve. So the third thing I want to talk about today is show appreciation. And this is coming really from our natural need as a human being. We need to have that appreciation. So because you need it, well, guess what? You can start getting it by giving it. So by allowing yourself to acknowledge other people's good stuff and show them and share with them your appreciation for whatever it is that they're doing, it really, you're sitting a, like a role model on how to do this. So they will get a hint eventually that, you know what, I'm being appreciated by my sibling, I'm being appreciated by my son, I'm being appreciated by my parent, and you know what, that's really not a bad idea, maybe I should do the same thing. So you're really leading the improvements of the relationship. Same thing if you are in an intimate relationship. It's very, very easy to get into a fight over not being appreciated. I've been standing on my feet, ironing your clothes, doing all the laundry and doing all the dishes, and I didn't hear a word of appreciation from you. That can be easily expressed, right? But how does that help the relationship? It doesn't. It just lets that frustration out. And we need to be very careful about emotions. And that's another thing that we can do to help relationships is really to understand and be or have that emotional intelligence. How do we manage these emotions that are inside us? Yes, question.
What if that person isn't good at appreciation and they're not good at communication? How can that affect the relationship?
So by you showing that appreciation, it will positively impact. So the question, what I'm hearing from you is that what if that person doesn't know how to appreciate or doesn't even care about appreciation? No problem. The quick answer is deep inside them, they will feel that warm fuzzy inside them when you appreciate them. Even if they're like, oh, don't talk to me about how good I did. I don't need to be praised. A lot of people do that. It's like, oh, don't praise me. I just do my job. I'm a dad. I'm a teacher. I'm a boss. That's my job. But deep inside them, they really like it. They just don't say it. So you are really making that change. And to them in their world, even though they externally express it, I mean, I'm talking generally speaking, right? But externally expressing that they don't want to do it or they don't show it, but deep inside them, you already made a change. You made them think about what you just did, that it is possible and they know how it feels. So it's very important. Based on your question right now, it made me think that it's really important when you do these things, don't expect. That's going to keep you stay on the positive, because when you're expecting, what's going to happen? What's the worst could happen? Disappointment. Disappointment feels good? No, doesn't feel good, right? What do you think? Disappointment feels good? Okay, just wanted to confirm with that. Sorry.
But isn't it a good thing to have expectations from the other side?
Tell me more. What do you mean it's good to have expectations from the other side?
That means you care about the other side. Like you're expecting the same way you treat that person to be treated at least in a better way or some way. Is
So,
that good?
um,
That expectation, that feeling of expectation. If I don't have expectation, then what's the point of doing that work?
okay, because expectation can be a negative thing, because I'm expecting them based on my world. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So basically, I am putting expectations on the other person in the relationship based on what I think what the relationship needs to be. But from their side, they feel like, I don't have to because I feel really comfortable in this relationship. So when we have expectations, that's why it ends up in disappointment, because if there's, especially when there is no communication. So when there is communication, it allows you to understand the other person's behavior. But it doesn't mean that they're not meeting your expectation. It's just the how they're doing it. It's just not the same way you do it. But the feeling is probably mutual. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's why it's important not to expect, because the expectations are coming from my experience or from what I saw in Bollywood or Hollywood. Is that fair? I mean, really, because that's how we learn about relationship. Where do we learn about relationship? Do our parents really sit down and tell us how to date? Do our parents tell us to sit down and how to make a friend? I didn't have that, and I would imagine none of us had that. Thank God for TV. But guess what? Everything we learned on TV, guys, everything is not, is like 50% true. It's just as good of it true as it is as false. So that's something to be mindful of, right? But you got yourself on a tangent here. But that's a really good thought, and I like these kind of questions. So we'll go back on the track. So the last thing I said is just to show appreciation, and also, so when we show appreciation, it really helps us to do the fourth thing. It allows us to, I'm going to say it in a negative sense, don't criticize. When we show appreciation, we need to be mindful also not to criticize the other person, because it's kind of easily to criticize. Oh, you don't clean after yourself. What else, in your friend's relationship that would criticize their partner or their other person? Have you been criticized by someone in your life? What's the common criticism?
It don't matter to you.
It's none of your business.
It's not even-
You're lazy. How many times have you heard that? Why are you so lazy today? Are you lazy every day? How come you don't do things around the house? We hear that a lot. I always take the garbage. You don't do anything around the house. Hi, mom. Her mom, not my mom. What else? Have you not been criticized? Am I the only one who's been criticized in their relationship? What are some of the things that are common that you heard it from a friend?
Say things without thinking.
They tell you, oh, you say things without thinking, right? Yeah, that's very easily, that's common criticize. Just take a moment and think about it before you open your mouth. That's a really harsh way to say it. Yeah?
You're so talkative.
You talk too much. Yeah.
I hate that.
Yeah. Any? Oh, I thought you were raising your hand. Any other thoughts? Why are you dressed like that? Oh, you really don't look really good in this dress or in that dress. Why your hair looks like that? Did you wake up on the wrong side of the bed? And some of the criticism, sometimes we really do it out of habit. We don't even know that it's criticizing, but it's really hitting the other person as a criticism. So the other person, without knowing, they just laugh it off. But actually, it hit the other person, and guess what? It damaged or scratched that relationship. And the more you criticize, the more scratches. Would you like to drive your car if it has a lot of scratches? You don't care about your car scratches, do you? You go polish. And this is what the talk is all about.
As
Is to
long,
polish your relationship.
as long as it moves.
But the idea is really you don't like your car to be scratched. When you see a scratch in your car, it's like, oh, even if it's like a Datsun from the 1970s or something, it's still your car. You don't want it to be scratched. I don't know. Do you guys know what a Datsun is? Anyway, it's a car. Okay. So the idea here is that these negative things that we do when we don't communicate, it scratches their relationship. When we don't show appreciation, it scratches the relationship. The more we do or the more we don't do, it does impact the relationship. And therefore the relationship, it can last for what? 5 years, 10 years, 12 years, 20 years, 30 years, but then it'll die because it's just holding on to the last thread and then breaks and is gone. So you don't even have energy to work back on the relationship. So this is a proactive way on how to keep your relationship strong and nurtured. Yes.
So does that mean when the relationship breaks, does that mean that the relationship was toxic?
Well, I mean, we can focus on the negative, that it is toxic, or we can start to learn how do we make the toxic positive. So if I say, like, don't criticize, what's the opportunity there? The opportunity is that I can accept the other person's whatever they're highlighting and I just go fix it. That's one way. Excuse me. And the other way is really to learn. What is it that is they're upset about? So it's not really my behavior. So I need to be mindful that it's not really necessarily me that I'm lazy. It's just that that's their impression, that's their perception. What is causing them to feel that way? What is it that they need? So it helps me to grow, really, if we think of it from a positive perspective. So I can say, my dads are very, very negative. Hardly ever talk to me. When he ever speak to me, he scolds me. I can say that, but how does that help me? Nothing. It just helps me to stay away from that relationship. But if I really I really appreciate my dad and I respect him. And if I really care and I say I care, I need to show that in my action. So I can show that in my doing my part. I can reach out to do the things that I'd like to do for the relationship with my dad. I can suggest my dad, how about we go bowling? He might say no. Like, why would you talk to? He'd be like very strange to him, right? Or to your partner, to your fiance, boyfriend, girlfriend. You can initiate. They're so busy with doing papers and school projects and making money or whatever the case might be. You can initiate that instead of saying, "Oh, you don't take me anywhere. We don't do anything," right? So we can learn how to address what's really impacting that relationship negatively. Yes. Since everyone is what? I'm sorry?
Different. The way I show appreciation is different than how they felt appreciated.
Mm.
So like in this kind of situation, how to
Yeah, because so your question is just to make sure that it's in the mic. So your question is like, if since everybody's love language is different, if I show appreciation is my language, what about the other person's? What if that's not their language? Is that what I'm hearing from you? Yeah. Unless you guys did that assessment online, and I really don't know how effective it is, but it can be helpful. I just I haven't really done the time to study the effectiveness and the evidence behind it. But it's really useful to many people that they find it useful to understand a little bit about their partner. And if that is, if your partner or the other person doesn't have that appreciation as a language, then you try whatever it is that they want. So active service. If it's active service, then you do active service. So that's something that maybe is not comfortable for you. It's like, well, I want things to be done for me because I also like active service. Well, again, what I said before, you do things that the other person that you like. They say in the Bible and in the Quran and in the Old Testament, like to thy neighbor what you like to thyself, right? Or like to others what you like to yourself. So religion teaches us that, but this is not a topic about religion. But we do have these values in our culture, and it doesn't have to really match my liking. So if I like it for myself, if I like to be appreciated, right, and my partner or the other person in my relationship likes the active service, then I like for them what I like for myself, right? I like for them to be felt that love, because that's what it's all about, right? So the language, the love language is all about what are things that we do to make the other person really feel that they are loved, right? I mean, that's really the whole purpose. So yeah, sometimes you would do things that you don't like doing it. So you do it for the love of the relationship with that person. Does that answer your question or your comment? Yeah. Good. I'm glad you brought that up. All right. Anything else? So I would like to go to the next habit that we can include in our daily life, is in our relationship. To add on to the active service is really to take it up a notch, to think about it that you are really, again, as I said before, you're setting the example in the relationship. You are leading by example, really. That's the way to lead, really. So so one thing, if you like if your love language, quote unquote, I mean, we talk about love language now. If you like things to be done for you, then you can lead by doing that. So you can be the example. You can comply to your partner's needs or to the other person's needs. And you can show them that you are investing in that relationship. So therefore, if you do all the things we taught that I spoke about earlier, the communicating, the appreciation, all that, this is a recipe to improve the reception of the other person when you do things to comply with their needs. Because you're putting yourself as a second sometimes to comply with the other person's need. And when you communicate, when you learn how to communicate, and it's really for them to understand that you are doing it for them, you really don't like doing it. So like, huh. So being the example in the relationship is very important. So that's something that you can do as a recipe or as a habit that you can bring into your relationship. Any thoughts or comments on that? Yeah? So far so good? All right. So the next one I want to talk about, I mentioned earlier about the emotional intelligence, but it's not just emotional intelligence. A lot of people talk about emotional intelligence and how important it is. Yes, emotional intelligence, we need to understand what's the purpose of the emotion. The purpose of the emotion is there for us to do something, not just to sit there and just allow the emotion to go through our heads all the way to our toes. It's not really that. It'll still be there. We need to learn how to use that information for our own benefit. So if you're in a relationship that is causing you with emotions that are negative, it's really important to know the emotional intelligence, how to manage these emotions so you can make it an actual, what do you call this? Like a factor, an actual factor that improves your relationship. So that therefore we need to balance emotional intelligence with what? What? We balance emotional intelligence with what? Dum, 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 dum. I'm sorry? With IQ. Yeah. Yeah. So the emotions need to be balanced with the intellectual, with the cognition, with the creativity. So we need to be able to be mindful the emotion is there, but we also need to be mindful that I am capable, I can, I do, I am able to create, I'm able to find a solution. So that's how we can balance. But if you were to join any emotional intelligence training or program, maybe you should guys have an emotional intelligence training workshop. How's that? And help people on how to make a connection in expressing the emotions by actually activating the IQ. So it's really important. It's because you find people that are focused only on the mind, solutions, solutions, solutions. And it's really funny that in any relationship, when a person is expressing pain to the other person, 95%, maybe 99%, their answer is a solution. This is what you need to do. But that's not really what the other person wants, because the other person is capable, doesn't want a solution, just wants you to listen. And we have two ears and one mouth, so we need to listen twice as much as we speak, right? Twice as much. Can we do that? 50-50? It's very difficult. It can be very difficult. All right. So in order for us to give that emotional support, we also need to give that intellectual support. So we don't need to find solutions to the people. So if I'm in a relationship with my friends, with my children, with my parents, with my loved ones, or in the intimate relationship that I'm in, I need to be mindful that the emotions is a big part of the relationship. So I need to give that emotional support. And I need to also support them to start having that intellectual support. So I can also see how I can guide them to go find solutions, right? So that's another thing that we can do to nurture the relationship and to make it a healthy relationship. I said before about being the example. Another thing that we can do is really to share. Share a vulnerable moment with your loved one. you as a parent maybe not comfortable. The culture doesn't expect you to be vulnerable in front of your children because of expectations that you inherited in your genes, and that's okay. But I also would like to highlight, by us showing that it's okay to share a vulnerable or an embarrassing moment, it really might help your child's life. It might help your partner's uh, career in their whatever they're doing. It really can be positively impacting them, because you're allowing them to think, yeah, it's okay. It's okay to say vulnerable, to state something vulnerable and how you came out of it. So to share that experience with them, it's really, it can be a good nurturing um, um, event or activity that you can do with your family, with your setting a time on the week, for example, or a time of the day that you guys need to sit down and turn off your TV, turn off your screens, and talk. What happened today? Was something funny happened today? And spend time with eye contact, not iPhones. Is that possible? Is it fair to say that? You have time with eye contact, not iPhones. So that's something that so that allows us to open the channel of communication, and it allows us to uh, learn also from the other person's experiences, right? What else? What else do we have? One of the most important things also to put in a relationship is to forgive. This also nurtures the relationship quite effectively by forgiving, because we all make mistakes. If your partner in a relationship, or your sibling, your parent, your coworker made a mistake, well, guess what? You're not perfect. Just a matter of time that you're going to make the same mistake or similar mistake that is going to impact the relationship similarly. So therefore, by you um, by you setting that example again, you're allowing 50% chance increased of improvement. So you do your 100% of the 50%. Does that make sense? So you are really setting the example to be followed. And yeah, sure.
Is forgiveness something that could be out of our control? Because sometimes someone might say they have forgiven, but they don't really actually feel like they have forgiven.
And what do you think they would be like? What makes them think that they're not free? They haven't forgiven?
It's their words, they say, yeah, I have forgiven you, but then it doesn't really feel like they have forgiven.
Okay, so forgiveness is a bit tricky. So we might forgive the person, but we're still in pain. We still have the pain of hurt. We still have the pain of, but that doesn't mean I don't forgive you, right? So these are two different things. Like for example, I mean, I'm gonna go with an extreme example. You get hit by a car. You're like biking and you get hit by a car. And you understand that the person is an older person and all that. So you go to the hospital, you get medication, attention, and all that stuff, but you're in pain. And you're like, hey, you're an old man, I'm not going to press charges. I'll just release that. But you'll always remember that person who caused you the pain. So we need to differentiate the pain from the forgiving. The forgiving can be done. It's like, I'm not holding it. I'm not going to go back and sue this person again. But I am still in pain because of what you did, right? So that's natural. It's just a matter of really learning how to heal. And this brings me to the last uh, thing that I can mention here today. If all of these things that I mentioned, you've done the 50%, and it's still not working for you, and the forgiveness, and there's a healing process that is not going through, but that's where you need to reach out for professionals, right? You need to reach out for a psychologist, for a counselor to help you through this, to help you manage and to be more effective in what you're doing with your relationships, right? So these are some tips that might, I mean, they're very likely to work. If you really did it, it can work. It might take time, but if you want your relationship to kind of get a boost, or if it's really in a very bad position that is not you're not able to pick it up, it's really important to give it a boost by going to see a professional that is specializes in relationship. Or if you want to work on yourself just to cope on the pain that is going through you because you're putting so much effort and you're still not being recognized, you're still not being appreciated, you're still not being supported emotionally or intellectually, or and you're just putting so much on and you're exhausted. So there's a burnout in a relationship. So if you feel like you're being burned out in a relationship, so reach out for help with someone that can give you the support and how you can cope with that. But if you want to work on a relationship, take that person to a therapist, counselor, and work on it. So both of you can learn. Because maybe something is blocking the other person from giving you back what you like to. Yeah. So any other thoughts or questions before we end? Yes. So the question is, how do we define toxicity? So there's a video I did like during COVID as about toxic relationships. So I would invite you to go look at it. But in general, if somebody's doing something that is consistently rubbing you the wrong way and it just never stops, it can be developing to become a toxic relationship. So I honestly don't like to focus on the negative because I can be toxic without me knowing, right? You might see me as a toxic person in a relationship or in the environment, but I think I'm really doing you a favor because I really don't know it. So giving that feedback can be very helpful to you. It could be a perception. So toxicity can also be a perception. But if the behavior is there, understanding what's behind the behavior helps us really to put a frame around that action or around that behavior. So therefore, what I said first is communication is really important. So yeah, we can be in a relationship with our boss, with our parent, with our loved one, or with our any intimate relationship, and they be toxic. But yeah, I can walk away from it. I can move out. I can block them. I can ghost them. But how does that help me as a person? How many people I'm going to be ghosting for the rest of my life, right? How many people I'm going to be cutting off? I'm going to end up being, probably a lonely old person and die alone in my apartment somewhere. I don't know, maybe on the road. I don't know. If I keep, if my boss is toxic and I keep quitting, how is that going to help me? So toxicity can be a positive opportunity for you to put that 50% of your part, to understand the other person, to communicate with the other person, to reach out for help, how to address this person, how to make sure that this person doesn't hurt you, doesn't harm you emotionally. So it's really important to learn all these skills. Yeah. So there are a few things that can, I mean, if you feel like anxious around this person all the time, and this person makes you feel anxious because they're like a ticking bomb, anything can blow up, can cause them to blow up, that can be seen as a toxic relationship. But again, I would rather focus on the positive, how I can contribute to this person to make them feel at ease around me or around. So these are the things that we can do positively. Good question. Yeah. Any other thoughts or questions before we end the talk? No? All good? All right. Until the next talk, I hope you all have happy relationships and happy days until next week, Wednesday. Yeah. Stay happy.